Hey, what's going on? I'm Keith here from Sports Vibes TV, and today I'm joined by my co-host Inf. Inf, how's everything with you?
Listen, man, the season's over, and now now we just looking at what we've done and hoping for the best for next season.
Facts. One thing is for certain, this starting lineup definitely has to be retooled. We're going to talk about the guys that were featured in the starting lineup, the most recent iteration of the starting lineup before the injuries and things like that. So we're going to look at players like Alec, Burks, Evan Fournier, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson. Now, two of those players are extension eligible in Mitch and RJ. And, two different circumstances, even though they're both extension eligible. With RJ, it's more so of a rookie extension where we still have him for next season to further evaluate him. But with Mitch, if we don't extend him, he could be gone in free agency this season. So those two, we're going to talk about their play this season. Were they worthy enough for extensions? And if so, how much? And then we're going to look at guys like Julius Randle, Evan Fournier, and Alec Burks. These are guys that you could look towards moving on from them in order to help build around some of our young guys, RJ Barrett, who I mentioned earlier, also Manuel Quickly, Obi Toppin, etc. So, Inf, it's been a while since you've been on the channel. So, how have you felt about this disappointing season?
I felt disappointed. I mean, yeah, at the beginning of the season, with the additions we got, I was expecting us to build off what we had last season and be in the playoffs. But I didn't even think of us being a potential play-in team. I thought we were going to be one of the top 6 seeds this season again. So you know, disappointing season that we didn't even make the play-in. It was just a disappointing season all around, man. It's been hard to watch Knicks games. It's been hard.
It's
Still
been
watch
stressful.
them, but it's just hard.
Yeah,
Especially
it's
when
been
you
very stressful, bro. Go ahead.
I know, especially when winning the game didn't matter. The only bright side about us officially, once we were out of the playoff run, was the fact that Tibbs was finally playing other players. That was the only
that was the bright spot, I guess, towards the end of the season. We saw Emmanuel Quickly. We saw Obi Toppin really shine in the last four games of the season. And that, I think, was a great way to top off what we have said has been a rough year. And I just wish we would have done things a little bit differently. That way we could have still been, on the stream now talking about us either, fighting to win the play-in or already waiting for an opponent in the playoffs. So the fact that we're here talking about the offseason already is a little bit unfortunate, but we'll have some fun. A shout out to the people in SV Nation that pulled up for the live stream. I see Andrew in chat. He said the OB Federation has assumed control. Hopefully the OB Federation assume controls of the starting lineup next season. That's one of the things we'll talk about here on the stream. Adele Chapman, salute. We've also got Il Matrix. And one thing we'll do will be grading players as well. So if you're watching live, you can put your grades in the chat and we'll shout them out during the stream. And also if you're part of the replay squad, you can put your grades in the chat as well, and I'll comment and discuss it with you in the chat. So the first player we are going to discuss is Alec Burks. Now, Alec Burks, I think for the majority or the entirety of the second half of the year, he was played out of position at point guard. And these were his per game totals for the season. He averaged 11.7 points per game, 4.9 rebounds per game, 3 assists per game, 1.1 turnovers per game. He averaged 28.6 minutes per game. And if you look at his shooting percentages, he actually shot better from 3 than the field. He shot 39% from the field and 40% from the 3-point line. Also, let me move the comment real quick because you'll also see he played a whopping 81 games. So the vet was there for the bulk of the games played. And Inf, let me know your explanation as to why you gave Alec Burks a C this season.
So just as a precursor to all of my gradings, on top of their play this season, I also took into account their contracts. So their contracts, along with their play, averaged the grading that I gave them. So to me, Alec Burks, did he play phenomenal? No, he didn't. But did he play bad? Not really. I mean, these are decent numbers for someone who's in his contract budget. I mean, he shot 40% from 3. He was playing in a position that he shouldn't have been playing in, but that's not really in his control. But being forced to play point guard and still being able to average 3 assists a game, and almost 5 rebounds a game. I mean, that's decent. So to me, that's why I gave him a C. He did reasonable based off of what we're paying him.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm also putting a question in the chat. I want to know from you guys, SB Nation, should the Knicks bring back Alec Burks? First response is going to be no. Trade to the highest bidder. The second one is going to be yes. Keep him in the mix at point guard. And then the third is going to be yes, keep him, but not as a starting point guard, but coming off the bench. Okay, let me just add the last one, and then I'll submit it for you guys to respond. So if you gave him, let me pull it up again. You gave him a C. I wasn't too far off from you. I gave him a C minus, just to mention, he did. Say it again.
No, yeah. Why a C minus?
Yeah, I gave him a C minus because a lot of it I say wasn't exactly his fault. We mentioned Tibbs playing him out of position at point guard, and for what he was asked to do, he didn't do a great job. But when your coach is not putting you in a position to succeed, I just have to grade you a little. I have to factor that into the grading process. So for me, I gave Alec Burks a C minus, and let me just finish up on the poll. That way, you guys can get your vote on. Let's see. Yes, keep him off the bench. Okay. So there we go. So yeah, I believe personally, I'll answer first before I ask you guys. I think that we should, if we're going to keep Alec Burks, he should ideally come off the bench. But me personally, I think we should move off of Alec Burks. I think he can still bring in some value. We're going to look at other players in the starting lineup, and when you look at his contract compared to theirs, his might be a little bit more movable. Also, you look at teams; they might look at his ability to play, some perimeter defense better than some other options that I would put on the trading block this offseason. So that might make him a little bit more attractive and could potentially net us a little bit more. So me personally, I would move off from Alec Burks, but the only way you bring him back is for him to come off the bench. There's no way you bring him back and continue this Alec Burks as the starting point guard experiment. What say you, if you're trading?
My answer is a bit different. I'm letting him go if we're keeping Tibbs as the coach. If we're moving on from Tibbs, then I'm keeping Alec Burks. I feel like Alex Burks can actually help this team and be a valuable asset to this team in different positions that a different coach would play him in. And so it wouldn't make sense to move him if we did move on from Tibbs, who just doesn't know how to, utilize Alec Burks. But if the front office is deciding that Tibbs is the man and we're staying with Tibbs, then we have to move Alec Burks, because if not, he's going to continue to play point guard, and he's going to continue to eat minutes from players like Quickly.
Facts. So also, if you look at what Alec Burks did and where he ranked amongst the team, he was 5th on the team in points per game, 5th in rebounds per game, and 6th in assists per game. But what really sticks out to me is the fact that he was 1st in games played. I think we have a young team. Leon Rose, when he had his little propaganda tour, not even a tour because there was only one video that he released, but he mentioned how young this core is and how many young players we have on the team. So for the fact that we've got Alec Burks, a vet who has already reached the ceiling, already plateaued, averaging or playing the most amount of games on this team, I think it just shows you how ridiculous some of the decisions were made that were made towards the end of the season. So if you look at some of Alec Burks' highlights from the season, he led the team in games played, which I just mentioned, and he also shot 40% from 3. Some of his struggles, though, he was forced to play point guard, and also you see that his field goal percentage was lower than his 3-point percentage. He shot 39%, or if I'm not, I believe it was 39% from the field and 40% from the 3-point line. He really struggled finishing once he got into the paint.
Yeah.
Let's see what some people in the chat say.
Salute Anodi.
Fact, salute Nudie. He said, if got permission to pod again. Oh, man. We appreciate having you back on the podcast. If appreciate it. Nudie says, welcome back. Splashing 12676 agrees with you. If he says as long as Tibbs is here, he got to go.
Yep.
East Blue Drew says Burks is so confusing. 1 minute he is Westbrook, the next second he turns into Jordan. That's a fact. There's some moments where Burks is single-handedly winning us the game in the fourth quarter, and then you have other games where he's giving up stupid turnovers. He's turning the ball over on inbound plays, and making bad decisions out there on the court. So he's an enigma. Hopefully, if we do move on and bring in a new coach and he stays, maybe he can. The new coach can get a little bit more out of him. But I think if we can make a move, if we can trade off of him, we can probably get something half decent in return, especially looking at his contract, which I think is a little bit more friendly than some of the other veteran guards on this roster. John Talento says, gotta trade Burks. We need to make room for Cam. That's a fact. We got a log jam right now for guys that can play out there on the perimeter, play wings or be wings out there on the court. And if we're able to move either Burks or Fournier, I think that really opens up a spot for both Grims and Cam to. Oh man, got tongue twisted there for both Grimes and Cam to see some minutes out there on the court, because we have to remember Grimes, he ended the season injured, but you expect him to feature heavily in the rotation next year. And I want to see Cam given an opportunity to at least win the starting spot coming into next season. So Keyshawn said Burks needed to go yesteryear. Salute. Facts. All right. If anything you want to say on Burks before we move on to the next player?
No. I mean, we discussed potentially moving on from players to make room, and I mean, depending on who the next player is, we'll see who I want to move on from.
Well, next guy is going to be Evan Fournier, the Frenchman. Oh, actually, before we get into Evan, let me backtrack. I'm getting ahead of myself. I always do this. I put a poll up and always forget to check the results. All right, here we go. We're going to close the poll. Let's see what the chat says. Chat says no, trade to the highest bidder when it comes to the Knicks bringing back Alec Burks. That wins out with 63%. 36% what would keep him off the bench. And we've got a bunch of wise people in chat because nobody opted to keep him as the starting point guard, which says a lot because our coach continued to trot him out game after game. And nobody wants to see him as the starting point guard for the New York Knicks next season. From the chat to the locker room. All right, now let's move on to the next player, which is the Frenchman, Evan Fournier. Now, if you gave Evan a D, how come? Yeah. Let's hear about it.
All right, first off, we're paying this man 70-something mil to score 3 more points than Alec Burks, to get 3 less rebounds than Alec Burks, and to get 1 less assist than Alec Burks. Why do we need this man? He plays worse defense than Alec Burks too. Like, if I have to choose between Evan Fournier, who's making 70-something mil, and Alec Burks, who's making less than half of that, I'm going with Burks. We expected this man to come in and score and, basically be that second option consistently, and he hasn't been. He has too many games where he's in the single digits, but he's taking double-digit shots. He was just a huge disappointment to me. Like, I expected, him to be a problem defensively, people able to score, but I thought that maybe his scoring would, be better than his lack of defense. And he's had those, random games where he'll score like 25 to 30 points. But it was too few and far between for me to be like, he's worth keeping. He isn't. He's way too overpaid. We're not like he needs to go.
All right. So I put a poll in the chat. I'm asking what role should Fournier have with the Knicks? The first answer is going to be none. Au revoir. Second is going to be a starting role. And third is going to be a bench role. Let me know your answer in the poll down in the chat. Now, with Evan Fournier, I gave him a C+ because I think it was a little bit more of it was another situation where the coach didn't really put him in the best situation to succeed. I don't think Evan Fournier is going to be best served as a starter on this team. You look at how many minutes he played per game at 29.5. I think we would have seen a more effective version of Evan Fournier if he was closer to around 23, 24 minutes per game. That way he's not allowed to be exposed out there defensively. And then if he was coming off the bench, he wouldn't be going up against, other teams' starters and things of that nature. I think Evan Fournier still can be used as a weapon. His three-point shooting is something that, can definitely be used on this team, but the issues with the defense definitely affected my grade. If he was a better defender, maybe he might have gotten a B-, but he was just a turnstile defensively. But to get into his per game stats this season, he averaged 14.1 points per game, 2.6 rebounds per game, 2.1 assists per game. He had 1.3 turnovers per game, and like I mentioned earlier, averaged 29.5 minutes per game. He shot 42% from the field, 39% from the three-point line, and once again, another veteran that eclipsed the 80 games played mark with 80 right on the dot. So with me, I said I would bring Evan Fournier back, but only in a bench role. And you're saying if you'd get him out of town, ship him?
There's no way I'm paying a bench player 70-something mil. I'm just
But he's not making that over. He's not making that in 1 year. He's only making like what is it, 17 or 18 mil annually? There's other bench players making that.
Nah, not on the Knicks. There ain't. Like, come on. He's the one.
They should though. I think he's best served in that role coming off the bench. He can still be a weapon offensively. And I think one thing we both agree, next season you have to move either Alec Burks or Evan Fournier. I think Evan gives us a little bit more from the three-point shooting aspect, and when it comes to the floor spacing, then Alec Burks would give us defensively. Say it again?
His three-point percentage was less than Alec Burks.
His three-point percentage was less than Alec Burks, but also look at the volume. So they were close in terms of their three-point percentage, but you look at Evan Fournier, who set the record for most three-points made in a season for the Knicks, the franchise record. I think having that off the bench, the fact that he can knock down threes and catch and shoot, and also he's got that fading three from the corner that he can knock down with deadly precision, he'll be a weapon off the bench. When you make him a starter, you put him up against the opposing team's best, they can start to attack him, start to pick him apart, and then that's where we see the defensive integrity start to be compromised. So, off the bench is where I think he should be ideally, and we'll see what SV Nation says in the poll. Also, let's see what they say in chat. UBG says Fournier and Burks will have to go in order for Grimes and Cam to get minutes.
I mean, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that as well. I'd be fine as that. But the thing is, for me, it's hard to find moves where you can get both of them, shipped out of town. That's the only thing I would be a little bit
taking on like a bad contract. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
you get like a first-round pick, but also like a bad contract.
Facts. Omari Belgrave says, I want Fournier's contract gone, but his skill set can help the bench. Yes, like you said, he is getting paid a decent amount of money. I mean, in the greater, picture or the greater landscape of the NBA, it's not an, exorbitant amount of money, but it's still a reasonable size contract, especially for somebody to come off the bench with the kind of deficiencies Evan Fournier has. But we've seen when he can get hot, he can definitely, jumpstart this team when we're having some lows offensively. So I think that aspect of his game is something I definitely like. And I think we could, use that at coming off the bench in a smaller role. Honestly, I think his role and Emmanuel Quickly's, if Tibbs was going to continue to do the nonsense with starting Burks, if their roles were flipped, maybe we might have seen a little bit better production from Evan Fournier. And even,
we can say the same about Burks.
Say it again?
We can say the same about Burks. If he was coming off the bench in the shooting guard position, he'd probably be much more efficient than he was. And again, making less money and playing better defense.
Yeah, and it's crazy how we can see that, but the coach, for some reason, he still felt like, or he had the audacity to say Alec Burks was the best option at point guard. Crazy. Yeah. So just looking at some of the highlights for Evan Fournier this season, like I mentioned earlier, franchise record for most threes, 241, and the struggles. He was a turnstile on D, and also he struggled with stakes from San Antonio. Remember he had that issue? Had a bad game and blamed it on the stake from San Antonio.
Ridiculous, man.
Keyshawn says Fournier needs an actual system to show his highest value. In my opinion, I would agree with that. You heard Evan Fournier, after games mention that some of the guys really don't know what they're supposed to be doing out there on the court. So, honestly, when I'm watching film, I'm not sure what the concept we're running are out there, and that comes from the coaching. We've already mentioned it with Alec Burks. We're mentioning it here again with Evan Fournier, and it's going to be a constant throughout the discussions of these players and how they performed this season. You mentioned before we came on air that it's the players out there playing, but you still need the coach to put these guys in the best situation to succeed. And I think was a major reason why this team failed to reach expectations.
I don't know. I mean, like, I get that part, but to me, coaches mainly impact defensive sets and coming right out of timeouts. Because obviously a play is designed and set up based off the coach. But after the first two possessions during a streak of both teams going back and forth, that's up to the players. I mean, you're either gonna make the shots or you're not gonna make the shots. You're gonna get dumb turnovers, or you're not. Like, I don't know.
Well, you mentioned the defensive. You mentioned defensively we were terrible. No, go ahead. Finish your thought. I thought you were done.
No, like, obviously I give Tibbs a lot of blame, and I do want a new head coach, but for our offensive struggles, I can't blame Tibbs for that. Just because taking out, like, right after a timeout, that first possession, yes, that's all the coach. But after that, if you make the shot, you miss, whatever, you go back on defense, then you get back on offense. At that point, that's all the players. It's either they're making the right plays, or they're making their shots, or they're not.
It's not they have to make the right reads. But one, you mentioned inbound plays. We've seen time and time again where the Knicks were terrible right after a timeout inbounding.
Trying to run a play.
That's on Tibbs. Defensively, it seemed like guys really don't know what they were supposed to be doing out there defensively. You talk about rotations, in clutch moments, you have Tibbs taking out the hot guy and putting in somebody that the opposing team can attack time and time again. So, that's another issue that I think a lot of people had with Tibbs. And offensively, Tibbs is the one that's calling the plays out there from the sideline. You look at the time, where who screamed for Julius Randle ISO, even though we know that there's not going to be a high probability of that succeeding. And I think when you put all that together, it gives grounds for Tibbs to be terminated. And that's why a lot of fans have been asking for it. But unfortunately, they've already the team has already mentioned that they'll be moving forward with Tibbs. So right now, all we can do is analyze the players and see who's going to be shipped out of here and who can continue to stay here and, provide some value in whatever role this team decides to give them. So it's a crazy place. I mean, it's a crazy spot for us to be in, honestly.
Yeah.
Hey, I got George's here. Salute, George from Into the Knicks Verse. Make sure you guys are subscribed. George always dropping some fire. He'll be dropping some fire draft content, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications set to all. That way, next season when he's dropping recaps, you guys are notified and can pull up. Let's see. Let's move on to the next player now. If I think this is going to be someone that you're a pretty big fan of, it'll be Mitchell Robinson. Yo, when you sent me this grade, I ain't gonna. Once again, I'm terrible. Yo, you gotta hold me down, man. You gotta remind me the polls.
The poll?
Yeah. Oh, man. Here we go. And poll, let's see what the chat says. So the chat, we have 68% going with Evan Fournier coming off the bench. Then we have 20% saying Evan Fournier has to go and get traded. And then we have 11% thinking that Evan Fournier should continue to move forward on this team in a starting role. So we had a little bit more variety in this poll. All right. And since you guys know the cat is already out the bag, let's move on to Imp's favorite player on the New York Knicks, and that's going to be Mitchell Robinson. So, yeah, Mitch, you shocked me when you sent me the B-. I thought you was going to hate on him. I ain't going to front. You going to send me like a C- something.
Nah. I mean, listen, he played 72 games. My biggest criticism about him is staying healthy and, stop falling every single time. And I mean, he still falls. He's still unnecessarily at times too, but I mean, you can't be mad at 76% field goal, 25 minutes a game. These are things you just can't be mad at. Almost average a double. What, a point and a half away, a rebound and a half away, almost 2 blocks a game. Like, you can't be mad at it. So good for Mitch. I'm not saying I want to resign him or anything like that, but good for Mitch.
You talk about resigning him. That's the question I want to pose to the chat. Has Mitch shown enough to warrant us to, extend him? So should we extend him for a deal worth over 50 million a year? Extend him for a deal worth under 50 million a year? Or should we just let him walk and try to get some value in return for a sign and trade? So let me put that poll in the chat. And like I said, I'm glad you're starting to come over to the dark side and see Mitch does have some value out there on the court. He's an elite. Go ahead. What you were saying?
No, I was gonna say, like, I've been hoping him to play good all season. That way we could go the sign and trade route. Like, I want his value to skyrocket that way. Listen, man, we can get some value for this kid. Let's make it happen. Because I already know there's gonna be a team out there trying to throw a stupid amount at him just because they can. That's usually the case with restricted free agents. Look at not Karis LeVert. Who's the one on that the Cavs just threw 100 mil at?
Well, Jared Allen.
Yeah, look at Jared Allen, 100 mil, like, ridiculous. And I know that there's gonna be a team that wants to do that if he's a restricted free agent. So I'd rather us go the sign and trade route before that even happens.
I mean, honestly, he hits the open market. I think a team like Detroit could definitely swoop in and sign him. You got a team like Dallas that can also drive up the price, make this into a bidding war. So it's very likely we could see Mitch end up with a contract that's going to pay him over the 15 million a year mark. And I think that right there is when I start to be a little bit hesitant because, he played the 72 games this season, and that's phenomenal. That's great. But you still have some concern, some hesitancy when you're discussing a Jones fracture. So at 15 million a year, I'd, sign me up. But if we start getting into like the 18, 19 million a year mark, at that point, you're not getting enough value, I think, from Mitch, because at that price point, I want you to provide a little bit more offensively. So I would have hoped he would have shown a little bit more offensively to at least get some of those reservations out my mind. But if we can get to a deal right around the 14 to $15 million a year mark, which I think is what might be what it has to be, what might be what it needs to hit in order to get a deal done, then that's something I'd say sign me up any day of the week. Let me get this poll set up. Also, another thing I wanted to mention, defensively, he's a beast. You mentioned the 1.8 blocks, which is up on screen, but he has to get better at defending marquee matchups and stretch bigs, because if you look at some of his games this season, Vucevic, when he was guarding Vooch shot 8 of 9 from the 3-point line when he was guarded by Mitch. Miles Turner, he was 6 of 9 from the 3-point line when guarded by Mitch. Cat 2 of 3. Embiid 2 of 4, Jokic 2 of 4. So all of those guys were able to shoot 50% or better from the 3-point line when they were directly guarded by Mitchell Robinson. So I would like to see him do a little bit better on that end. And if he's able to do that, he'll be a monster and he'll be worth the 15 mil any day of the week.
Facts.
Let me just get.
Yeah, I just get the chat before you go to the next slide.
Say that again?
Don't forget the poll before you end with it.
Yeah, we're still talking about Mitch. All right. Action community. Oh, I misspelled extension. My bad, y'all. Russian. All right, let's see what the chat says. Lex the Destroyer says, pay that man and get him a better trainer. Wyatt Corville says, give him an unselfish point guard, and I feel he's a huge game changer. Sincere the Genius says, yes, pay Mitch. The thing is, I'm all for paying Mitch, but like I said, we have to get to the right price point, because Mitch is an elite rebounder. He can protect the rim better than any player on the team currently. But we saw Sims look very good at extended minutes. He can alter shots, not to the level of Mitchell Robinson, but with the athleticism he has and with the strength he has, he's able to, force players to alter somewhat when they get into the rim or get to the rim. He's also able to grab rebounds, and he has some shot blocking capabilities. Now, they all pale in comparison to Mitch, but I think if you look at Sims and what he can provide, maybe he can be given an opportunity to get a little bit more minutes, or at least be given the opportunity to earn the starting spot next season if we're unable to retain Mitch. So I'm going to be looking at some film and just trying to better analyze whether or not Sims could be some insurance for Mitchell Robinson when he hits free agency. JG says, bye, Mitch.
Mommy.
We surveyed 100 people. Our field reporter, salute. He says, if we trade Mitch, teams are going to score 150 on us nightly.
I mean, we barely had Mitch last season, and we made the playoffs, and ain't nobody really scoring us. But okay,
we were better, but then we had Nerlens Noel, and that's going to be something we'll talk about in another video. Nerlens and what we're going to do with him. If we are losing Mitchell Robinson, Nerlens Noel is another option as a replacement. Have him come and be the starting center next season, and then Sims be the backup option. But how could you rely on Nerlens? He was virtually unable to play this season due to a litany of injuries. It's not just one. He just had injuries pop up left, right, and center. So to rely on him to be the starting center next season, I think would just be setting us up for failure. There's no way we can move into next season with Nerlens Noel as the starting center. Maybe as a backup, but when we signed him to that contract, I already said we paid him a little bit too much to be a backup, and we already have Sims. So Sims start, Noel off the bench, that might be an interesting dynamic. But I still feel like if we can move off from Nerlens Noel and free up that money, that's something we should be exploring. We should be on the phones all night and day seeing if somebody could take that contract from us.
You forgetting that we got Tibbs on the team.
Facts.
Taj is going to be the one starting if we don't have Mitch. It's going to be Taj.
Taj needs to be sitting on the bench in a polo, not a jersey.
Yo, seriously, like, just make this man some sort of coach. Get him off the team. As long as he's on our roster, he's going to get minutes, and I don't like it.
Yeah. Andrew says Mitch has missed 30% of games in his career because of injury. I mean, I didn't do the exact calculations, but that could be correct. The only thing I would say is he's trending in the right direction. He had a career high in games played, and he also had a career high in field goal percentage. And this is coming, 2 years removed. I believe it's 2 years removed from the year in which he set the record for the highest field goal percentage. So, those are two things that you can point out to this season that are positives. If you look at the struggles, free throw shooting has continued to be an issue. That's something he needs to work on. Stamina was an issue to start the season, but he kind of worked through it. And I think the coaching staff realized they should be playing him in shorter spurts as opposed to trying to play him in, extended periods out there on the court. And like I mentioned earlier, it still has to do a little bit better guarding out there on the perimeter when he's up against some stretch fives in this league.
Yeah.
All right, now let's see what the poll says. And poll?
Lucky Charm 22 said Taj and Burks averaging 40 minutes next season.
It's when I saw how many games Burks played, I was like, dang, that was wild. Like, I don't understand how, 81 games is a lot of games, but towards the end, he should have sat a few of those games and let the young guys get a bulk of those minutes. So let's see. We closed the poll. 50% said yes, extend him for less than 15 mil a year, and 29% said yes, extend him even if it costs over 15 million a year. And that was 29% of the votes. And 20% says no, let him walk via sign and trade. So pretty much 80% believe we should do our best to at least try and bring Mitch back. So I agree with. All right, let's move on to the next player. Julius Randle. All right, so this season, Julius Randle averaged 20.1 points per game, 9.9 rebounds per game, pretty much 20-10, and 5.1 assists per game. He averaged 3.4 turnovers per game, 35.3 minutes per game. He shot 41% from the field, and he shot 31% from the 3-point line. Let's see if we can hide the comment. And he played 72 games. Now, if you gave Julius Randle a C minus, and I thought it was interesting that you gave Randle a better grade than Evan Fournier. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Look at all of his averages. I don't see an issue with anything on here other than his turnovers, really, to be honest. 20 points per game for somebody who's making close to the same, like Evan's making close to the same money, almost averaging a double-double. He's literally just 0.1 off, 5 assists, 40% from the field, 30% from three. He played 72 games. The reason why he's at C minus is more because of his attitude. Like it's just it doesn't seem like he's even been in it, like he's even been trying, which is why But if you look at just his averages, he should have gotten higher than a D minus or a C minus. But his attitude, his lackluster defense, it's been, I don't know.
It's stressful to watch as a Knicks fan. So I understand those points why you would rate or your reasoning for rating Evan higher than Julius Randle. But I would counter it and say maybe you should give Evan a little bit more credit because Evan was a better teammate, I think. You did mention Julius Randle with his energy, but I think Evan Fournier, even in games where he struggled, he still was able to, cheer on his teammates. He's still in the post-game press conferences. It seemed like he was looking for answers and try and figure out ways to be better for the team. But Julius Randle can't always say that was the same case, or at least I didn't feel like that was the same case. So like you said, his attitude definitely did factor in and was one of the reasons why I gave him a D minus, because like you said, the per game totals were solid at 20, 10, and 5. But you look at the inefficiency, 41% from the field as a big man, 31% from the 3-point line, which is a big drop off from what he was able to shoot last year. And you couple those inefficient, numbers right there, and the fact that he still was out there for 35.3 minutes per game, I think it just shows how Tibbs was kind of letting him run amok. Especially when you have a guy like Obi Toppin, who towards the end of the season showed that he could have maybe provided the Knicks, better play in some of those minutes. So for me, I give Julius Randle a D minus. And also, I want to ask a question in chat: can Julius Randle coexist with this young core? And I want to know the answer. Is it yes? But you have to keep Randle and keep Tibbs. I think the second question is going to be, or the second answer is going to be yes. Keep Randle and fire Tibbs in order for him to coexist. And then the last answer is going to be no, he cannot coexist, and ship him out of town. What would your answer be? And if you think Julius Randle can coexist, and if he can he do it with Tibbs, or do you have to get rid of Tibbs?
It's hard because you got to get rid of Tibbs for other players, but I feel like Tibbs, like if we didn't have Tibbs last season, then Randle wouldn't have played as good as he did last season, I don't know.
I think you put Julius Randle in a gym with 2,000 players and 2,000 people in attendance, and he's going to ball out, regardless of his coach. When you start putting people in there that he starts to get a little bit, he starts to fall off track. He starts to lose his concentration out there from what we've seen this season.
No, yeah, that's fair. I don't know, man. Regardless, I do think that if we can actually get something of value out, then let's move him. Just off the strength of the season that RJ had, like I feel like RJ needs to be our focal point anyway. So if we can move him for something that's worth what we can get back, then for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of his per game totals, if you look at it, he was ranked first in a lot of areas on his team. First in points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, and minutes per game. But he also led the team in turnovers per game, which is going to be expected, especially with the fact that he has the ball the majority of the time out there. And, he has the ball and doesn't really have good handles. So you put 2 and 2 together and you get turnover. He was fifth in games played. And, the highlights averaged to 20, 10, and 5, but the struggles were his inefficiency, lack of effort out there, and emotions. We can mention him doing the thumbs down him, just losing his mind out there on the court, whether it be with coaches trying to show him film or opposing players just trying to tell him good games. We saw a little bit of everything out there.
No, he had a rough season. Great numbers, but a rough season.
Yeah. So let's see. Keith Turner says both of them coming back. Not wasting my time on that. Okay, feel free.
Yeah,
Hey,
I mean, you're right though.
we got to speculate though. Like if you were
Actually,
running this team and you had to make the decision, what would you do? Would you bring back Julius Randle and think he would perform better with Tibbs, or would you bring him back and think he can correct it with Tibbs still as the coach? That's all. We just want to know what your opinions or what your thoughts would be if you were given the opportunity to run this team.
I don't know. I mean, because I kept seeing reports about Randle potentially requesting a trade, and then him saying no, they're fake. But anytime a player, like rumors come out about a player requesting a trade, they end up requesting a trade. Like they always say, "Oh, it's just rumors or whatever," and then a month or two later, they end up requesting a trade. So, I mean, who knows, man?
Also, what was also reported, I think, either today or yesterday, Steve Popper mentioned that Randle's apology was released, quote unquote, or issued, quote unquote, against his wishes. So he really didn't. It wasn't really a heartfelt apology. It was something that seems like the team kind of made him do just to save face. So that's another thing to add. And there's also reports, or not really reports, but people are starting to speculate and look at certain trade partners for Julius Randle, and they say Portland could be an option where we would receive Eric Bledsoe and Keon Johnson, also get a first in 2023, and we would have to ship out Randle and Evan in that package. And then also when it comes to Miami, they're talking about a potential swap for Jimmy Butler, where we would ship out Julius Randle. I'm not sure if I like any one of those options. I don't think we need a Jimmy Butler here. But if you were going to say we can trade Randle and Evan, get rid of those two contracts and bring back a Bledsoe, who I believe doesn't have too many more years left on his contract, that's something I could look into or kind of agree with.
Especially if we can get a first-round pick in there too, because I don't see Portland making the playoffs next season. So that first could actually end up being pretty decent.
Well, if you look at Dame Lillard coming back, they would still have Anthony Simons, and then you add Evan Fournier and Julius Randle.
Oh yeah, I didn't even take into consideration that. Nah, that's still not enough.
We shall see.
Doesn't Anthony Simmons play point guard just like Lillard?
Well, he can play off ball as well.
Yeah, but then, so what? Evan just comes off the bench. I mean,
like I said, Evan's best position is coming up. And if Evan were to be on a championship contending team, he'd be coming off the bench.
How can they afford Lillard, Fournier, and Randle though?
Because I keep telling you, Fournier don't make that much money. Julius Randle doesn't make that much money.
Lillard,
yeah, that's one player. Remember, for the most part, you can probably fit about 3 max contracts on it, as long as none of them are, I think, a super max. So if you can fit 3 of those players, Evan and Julius Randle together is probably the same price as one of them, as one max deal. Especially with Julius Randle not hitting the threshold for a lot of his incentives.
That's fair.
All right, let's see. Let's see what people have to say in the chat. JG says, I'm down for Randle to Portland for Dame. See, I don't know if they're shipping Dame out of town for Julius Randle.
Plus, we haven't seen Dame play a game. Like, I don't know, man.
In a minute.
Yeah,
I'm still just flabbergasted that the Sacramento Kings would give up Halliburton for Sabonis. I'm like, bro, we should have been on the phones and offering Julius Randle in that deal. But because he was out here acting a fool, we weren't able to get any kind of value for him at the trade deadline if we were trying to pursue a deal seriously. Oh, think ID. Oh, no, my bad. The kid 246 says they have a $20 million trade exception for, I would say, McCollum.
Oh, got it. Speaking of which,
as well.
Unrelated, you think Pels are going to beat the Clippers in the play-in tomorrow?
It'll be a solid game. It'll be a good game. I think they have a chance, but
yeah, because
I mean, I'm still shocked the Clips. Yeah, I'm still shocked they lost.
Yeah, like they fell apart. So if they do that again against Portland, and if Portland plays how they played yesterday, I don't know, man. I think Clippers might be at the
Might get
play.
out of here.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Let's shut down the poll and see exactly what everybody thinks. All right, so we have 86% saying we should ship Julius Randle out of town. I think this is probably the most lopsided poll we've had all day. 9% says yes, keep him and keep Tibbs. Oh, snap. I messed up and put the same thing twice. All right, so we're just going to roll with ship him out of town for 86%.
Yeah.
All right, next one. So last but not least, let's talk about our guy, RJ Barrett. Now, if you put B plus as his grade, let us know why you thought that B plus was the best decision for him.
Yeah, man, because first off, he has to get the best grade on the team. Like even with the averaging 2 turnovers a game, he clearly has just been improving every single year, and this year included. Averaging 20 points a game, almost 6 rebounds, 3 assists. He's been doing it all. He's actually been entertaining to watch in the 70 games that he's played. Listen, man, RJ. It needs to be our main focal point. We need to build this team around him, and moving on from Julius Randle will help us do that because clearly he can do what Randle was doing.
Okay, so would you say RJ Barrett has shown that he should be untouchable and he's worthy of a
Yeah,
extension this offseason? You
oh,
give him the max?
absolutely. I would move on from Randle and give him the max.
I hear you. I hear you. So just talk about some of his stats for this season. He averaged 20 points per game. So salute to him for hitting that threshold. I think that's the applause button. So give him the applause for that. He averaged 5.8 rebounds per game, 3 assists per game, and he averaged 2.2 turnovers per game. He averaged 34.5 minutes per game. He shot 41% from the field, 34% from the three-point line, and he played in 70 games total. So, he did get injured towards the end of the season. That was terrible to see. But luckily, we got some good reports saying that he'll be able to get back into his regular offseason routine after about 3 weeks to a month, which falls in line with Tom Thibodeau's active rest period for the players. So the fact that he'll still be able to have a full off season to work out and develop, I think is great and bodes well for us kind of rebounding next season. And I gave RJ Barrett a B plus. He wasn't perfect, so I couldn't go all the way up there and give him an A, but we definitely saw strides in a lot of areas of his game. Started to finish better with the right hand. The 3-point shooting was still a bit sporadic time from here to there, but I think he was able to knock down the three in some crucial moments for us, especially some buzzer beaters that definitely gave us some enthusiasm, especially at the early portion of this season. I think his playmaking and the synergy he was starting to develop with Mitch and also Obi Toppin, I think is something that I want this team to continue to explore with RJ initiating the offense. And I think RJ plays well with this young core that we're starting to develop on this team. And I think all that, you put that together, and the fact that he's playing with a coach that I think isn't putting him in the best situations to succeed. So you put all that together, and I think that equates to a B plus for RJ Barrett's performance this season. And also, like I mentioned, first time averaging the 20 points per game. And you can see the struggles. Free throw shooting, I forgot to mention that, was definitely a struggle this season. And consistency. There were some moments throughout this season where RJ would have games. I mean, you can see just from his field goal percentage, the 41%, because he would have games where he would shoot lights out. And then he would just have some games where the shot just wasn't falling. He was getting blocked too many times in the paint. And it's something that he has to continue working on. Like I said, it wasn't perfect this season, but I like the progression that I'm seeing from him in year 3. And I'm extremely excited to see what we get from him in year 4. Let's see. Rayology says RJ and Cam going to become a top 5 wing tandem in 2-3 years. I hope so. Hope so. With Tibbs, you never know, man. You never know with Tibbs. I already said Tibbs isn't really a Cam fan. And one of my biggest fears is the fact that we move on from Cam in order to try to bring in some win now players to try and save Tibbs' job. That's my biggest concern heading into the offseason. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into some other players on this roster. But I just hope this front office has enough patience to allow Cam an opportunity to, earn a spot on this team and in the rotation here in New York, as opposed to being trade bait.
It's gonna be nice seeing, like, as long as we move Fournier or Burks, hopefully Fournier, then we won't have no excuse not to play Cam. And listen, man, I keep hearing all this Zion nonsense, and I hope it doesn't. I hope it ends up not being nonsense. To be honest, I mean, I saw his warm up in the game, dunking like he's perfectly fine. It seems like he's just trying to pull like a James Harden, where he just doesn't want to play with them.
So you'd be in on the Zion sweepstakes?
At this point, I would be, just because after seeing that, I'm like, all right, this guy, he's healthy enough to play. It's just more like he don't want to play with them. He don't want to be there. So come over here and let's make things work. We got you two boys. Like, listen.
I mean, they did have a mock trade that would have sent, if I'm not mistaken, it would have sent Randle to Dallas, and we would have ended up getting Zion from the Pels, and we would have sent Fournier and a few other pieces over there. I think we would have lost Quick, though. I think Quick was included in that deal.
I'm fine with that. Like, to me, the only players I don't want to lose at all is obviously RJ and Obi. So if we can make something happen, that way we can have like Zion as our starter and Obi coming off the bench. Like,
facts. And you can see in year 3, RJ was second leading scorer in points per game, third leading scorer in rebounds per game, and he was the 5th leader in assists per game. Like I said, he showed an area or the ability to affect the game in multiple ways, whether that be his scoring or his facilitating. And I'm excited to see. We just need him to be a little bit more consistent. We saw him make strides with the finishing with the right, and now we just need him to be a little bit better at finishing around the rim. And I think he has the ability to make those adjustments and get better. So I think the Knicks are in a good spot here with RJ. We just have to try to do a better job building the team around him. You look at what the team did in the offseason last year, and I would say a lot of those moves weren't made with RJ Barrett in mind. I think more of those moves were kind of made in Julius Randle to help make life a little bit easier for him, and it ended up blowing up in their face. So if we go head into this offseason and try to bring in other young players to add to our young core of RJ, Quick, Obi, Deuce, Grimes, Cam, we can go on and go on. That, I think, would put us in a better position to succeed, because RJ, I think, plays his best basketball when he's out there with the young guys. So let's continue to bring in some young, talented players that fit his play style, can help add more spacing out there on the court for him. And I think we can really see what he can develop here in the NBA.
That's facts, no printer.
Bars. Lex the Destroyer says, run them likes up. Facts. We got 204 in chat. We're about an hour into the stream. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys are smashing that like button. We're at 67 likes. Let's see if we can get it to 100. Let's see if we can look at some more chats. May 4th, they coming for you. They said Mitch still a bum.
Listen, man. Clearly,
you said he was dirt, not bum.
Listen, they didn't see the stream, so they didn't see what grade he got, man. Listen, man.
Yeah. May 4th, if you're not at the timestamp, see if you can scrub a little bit. Mitch was the 3rd player we went over. I think if came and gave him his flowers, said he did play good, but he did have the disclaimer, said he played good, so now we can ship him for some extra value or for some additional value.
I ain't fake about it either.
So I ain't lied. I'm being honest. Uncle Ralph MCD says, I would like to see Farron Hunt get a chance on the Knicks roster. I want to see Lucas Samanic get a chance on the roster. What happened to that guy? He had an issue with his foot, and then they just fell off the face of the earth. I went to a Westchester Knicks game about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, when Deuce was able to, be clutch in a game against actually LaMelo and the Swarm, I think is what their name is. In that game, Luka was there. He was on the bench and he was shooting around at halftime. But since then, We haven't really heard much about him. They had to take him off the two-way contract to add Ferron Hunt, and that's a guy I would like to see factored a little bit more into the equation because a lot of Knicks fans believe the Knicks would be better off, would not be better off, but uh, would be smart in trying to bring in a stretch five. And Luka, he can knock down the three. I saw him knock down the three in person, and his form looks good, release looks good, and he was hitting nothing but net. So to have that guy on the roster and not really be able to play him, especially in a lost season, I think that sucks. But hopefully he's able to get back healthy, and maybe the Knicks can bring him back again, and maybe he can factor in next year.
That's not gonna happen. You know the Knicks,
right?
You know the Knicks. Anytime we add anyone who seems that they could be interesting, we end up moving them before they even get a chance to play. Like Luka Vildoza.
Well, Luka's playing for the Bucks now.
Yeah, not for us though.
Yeah, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm rooting for him. I hope he goes and kills on the Bucks. I told y'all he can be pretty good, especially off the bench, which is what the Bucks are going to use him. How the Bucks are going to use him if he does get minutes. So hopefully he'll be able to show something.
And he got He got a chance to win a chip.
Yeah, help him repeat. That'll be big. Salute to him. Salute to Argentina. Wish you guys the best, man. It was unfortunate it couldn't work out here, but at least he found a team that is in contention, and he's playing with a superstar in Giannis. So he ended up in a better position. Honestly, we're sitting here talking about what the team did in this season, and he's out there still playing and trying to win the ultimate goal. So crazy.
Can't do nothing but be upset. Like, why of all the Knicks players, of all the players who were Knicks this season, why is he the only one in the playoffs, man?
Crazy, right?
And then you heard like they're thinking about doing something with Derrick Rose so he could join another team potentially.
Well, like waive him or something?
Yeah. That way he could join a playoff team.
I gotta look into that. We can look into that, and whenever we discuss D Rose and how it's a few players that's gonna be hard to grade. Like Rose, he didn't play much. Noel, he didn't play much.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense to grade
Timber was a shell of himself. Yeah, maybe we'll do a show and just discuss all of those guys in one.
Yeah, if we're talking about grading players who played, we gotta grade Taj. This man played.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. Oh yeah, we can throw guys in one show and discuss them.
Yeah, so that's wild.
That could be like the rapid fire session. Let's see. Angel Torres has first unit of, I guess, RJ, Obi Toppin, Evan Fournier, quickly. I don't know who the fifth is. Mitch? I would assume Mitch.
Unless he's talking about Randle, like Julius Randle at the 5, Obi at the 4, RJ at the 3, Fournier at the 2, and Quick at the 1.
Could be.
I don't know.
Could be. It's either Mitch or Julius Randle. Could be one of those two. The Genius. Sincere the Genius says, if we were to get Zion, what happens to Obi? Obi gonna get shipped out of town.
Nah, he come off the bench, man. Randle getting shipped out of town. Obi come off the bench.
Man, I think Obi thinks he could be a great starter in this league. So I don't see Obi accepting coming off the bench for another guy like Zion.
Listen, man.
You know what I mean? It'd be nice insurance seeing that Zion has the injury history.
Exactly.
But if I'm Obi, you're gonna ship the guy in front of me out to bring in somebody else to block my path to starting. At that point, you're not making moves in my best interest. So I would have to ask my agent to explore other avenues. You got to be realistic as a player. You look at him; he's shown enough to get or to warrant more play time. And you go and bring in Zion, who, yes, is a transcendent talent, but there's a lot of question marks. So if I'm Obi's agent, I'm looking at the situation like you guys aren't making moves with my development and my growth in mind. So I'm gonna have to request a trade. And you couldn't be mad at Obi if they went and did that.
No, you can't be mad at him. But then he'll be mad if we start actually making waves, start hitting the playoffs consistently without Tibbs on the team. Like,
I think Obi will be all right with that as long as he gets his starting value contract. You'll be all right. You'll be like, yeah, we'll figure it out over on this side. As long as you guys are paying me my 17, 18, 20 million a year.
Or get him his scratch.
D-Ross says Zion off the bench.
I mean, that too. Listen, you got to earn your style here.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you trade for a guy like Zion, it's going to cost an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
You're going to have to pay him big money. And then you're also going to have to give up a sizable amount of assets in order to bring him in. At least that's what I think. I don't see the Pelicans moving off of Zion and not getting some major compensation in return. So we would have to either bring in a third team or we'd have to gut this roster both for players and draft picks.
No, hopefully we could bring in a third team. Listen, I'm hopeful, man. But I have to be off this. I got things that I got to do.
All right. We'll wrap up. Thank you guys for tuning in, SV Nation. We appreciate the support. We got 219 in chat. Thank you guys. We appreciate it. We're going to come on again and we're going to talk about some of the bench players. And we'll have the same concept. We'll grade them. Also ask some questions as to what their role should be on the team next season. And we'll get your input, SV Nation, regardless of any stream that I do. You guys are also an additional host and you help drive the show. As you can see, a lot of your comments were featured in the stream tonight. And we'll do it again when we start looking at some of these bench players. So if anything, any last words before we sign off?
Nah. I'll see ya next season.
Nah, bro. Grind doesn't stop, man. We're dropping content all off season. Off season. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for tuning in. Go ahead.
Now I said tune in to Sports Vibe.
You're already Sports Vibes TV, the place to be, as Foxy says. So thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate all the support. Were we able to get to 100 likes? We're at 99. One of you guys hold us down. We still got over 100 in chat. So that means one of you guys ain't smashed that like button. Do us that solid. Get us over 100. Also, if you're part of the replay squad and you're rewatching this, make sure you comment, you drop your grades as well in the chat, and we'll be able to discuss and talk about your thoughts as well. All right. So once again, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be live again. If you're free tomorrow.
What's tomorrow?
Friday.
Oh, no.
Friday. So we'll probably do it maybe Saturday or Sunday. That's cool with you?
Yeah.
We'll talk behind the scenes. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll figure out the next stream to talk about the other players on the roster. Thank you all for everything. It was a tough season, but you guys helped us get through it. So thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time.